I'm a car guy. I've had a lot of vehicles over the years. My first one was a 1971 Toyota Land Cruiser. It was an FJ40, which I still actually own to this day. They have to be good at off-road. If they're an off-road vehicle, I'm into it. But what I found out over the years is that Chevy trucks in general just require a lot more modification to make them do the kind of things that I want to do off-road. And so they're just rarely one of those vehicles that I start with as a platform for one of my projects. You know, most brands of trucks, I've owned them, and there are certain ones I really like, but the ones I've really gravitated to all these years still are the Toyota vehicles. They are still, when it comes to off-road stuff, they're really tough. They're designed for that kind of abuse. They can take it really well, and so I think that's one of the reasons why I've stayed with Toyota all these years.
But this time we bought a Chevy.
What? A Chevy?
I can't use. Okay. We bought a 2018 Colorado ZR2. We haven't bought a new truck in over a decade. We did all of our research and we pulled the trigger. We bought the truck and we really are hoping that it is going to live up to everything that we expect a four-wheel drive to be. So if you would join us on this adventure and we will take you where this truck is willing to go.
On road, this truck could be one of the best driving trucks I've ever driven, but it's got huge shoes to fill off-road.
Now we're gonna see what this thing can do. And now
We're gonna go climb a big hill.
All right, I'm heading up. Just gonna walk in the ditch. That was pretty bumpy there.
Yeah, but it handled it no problem. What do you think about finding something a little harder?
Awesome, let's do it.
Well, we got up to this one spot where we were wanting to test out the lockers. We wanted to see what this thing would do. We wanted to give you a good idea of what the lockers do for you and kind of how far they can take you. The differential lockers, what they'll do is where this tire was almost off the ground on a regular vehicle with no lockers, no nothing like that, the power is going to go to the tire with the least amount of traction. It's the worst thing in the world, you would think, for this kind of stuff, but it's kind of necessary for it driving nice on the road. So we're trying to find a spot where it would stop going without the lockers engaged, and it took quite a bit. It actually went a lot farther than we expected. We got to this spot. Finally, you can see where we spun one of the tires, and we had two tires kind of off the ground and was spinning, and then we were able to just engage the rear locker and get it to, pull farther up. That's one of the reasons we bought the truck. That was one of the big things. So this has a locker on the rear, which is what, like the Toyota Tacoma has that, the Ford Raptor, they have it on the rear. The game changer on this is they also have a full locker on the front, and that really makes an enormous difference on them.
From the factory.
From the factory.
From the factory.
The only other vehicles that have that are the Dodge Ram Power Wagon and the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, short of maybe like a $125,000 G-Wagon or something.
I don't know.
But it's it really makes this thing incredibly capable, and it's one of those things that just takes you, when you get on a trail to a point with most vehicles where they won't go anymore, this thing will just keep right on going. its biggest downfall is ground clearance. That is our biggest thing. We hung up with a rock on the back of it.
The tire, the spare tire. We had to take the spare tire off.
Spare tire is in the bed of the truck because it hangs so low. The MULTIMATIC shocks, those shocks that are just so wonderful on and off road. The worst thing about them is they hang down below the rear axle. They're actually the lowest point on the truck. Most vehicles, your lowest point of ground clearance would be like a differential or something like that. These ones actually hang below that on the rear, and they're a little on the fragile side. They're not something that's a really sturdy part that you can just sit there and beat on stuff. So they actually make an aftermarket skid plate for them. 589 Fab makes one that's pretty reasonably priced, and we have those on this just for that protection factor. But ideally, being able to move those to gain you some ground clearance would be the ideal fix there.
So all of you very observant people may have already noticed that we actually have steps on this. This truck is my daily driver, and one of the big problems from the get-go was that the rock sliders were not a step. And one of the comments that I made to Alan is, this is not a truck that I would put my grandparents in. There's no way for them to get in and out of this truck. So instead of buying steps, what my very brilliant husband did was he took our original factory rock sliders and he cut the brackets and moved them out, flipped them upside down, and created a step.
In this position, they may not be quite as strong as what they were from the factory, but I have tested them and they still do the job. And they're a step, which is really nice.
Which is nice. And we didn't have to lose any ground clearance in putting another step down there.
So those are our first impressions of the truck.
And I think overall it handled really well off-road.
Yes, it did.
I am really happy with it. But Alan, are you happy that we bought a Chevy?
So far, I'm really impressed with the ZR2. And now we get to do the fun stuff.
Okay, what's the really fun stuff?
Well, it needs bigger tires. It needs to be modified to make it ours. So now we get to do all that fun stuff. Tire shopping and shopping for cool stuff.
I agree. So join us next time on our next video as we do our tire shopping and shopping for cool stuff.